I'm Jack, is Ellen, and we'll be with you for about an hour. So thanks for hands up who was out last night and stayed out too late. Well, I didn't stay out too late, I stayed up too late. Okay? So thanks for coming. It's always nice to get a crowd of people. So this is me. If you're on Twitter, please follow me. I'm Media Murray, and the business is Media HQ News. And be digitally distracted. Send some tweets. It's in the spirit of the event. Get into it. This is Matilda, by the way, at the front of the room, my daughter, and she'll be handing out a piece of paper soon. So you've got to get them in early digitally, and you've got to train them early. I'm a huge fan of. Does anybody know who this is? This is Seth Godin, and he's I think my favourite marketeer in the world. And a couple of years ago, he sent out a blog post, and it was called "The Power of a Single Day." And in it he said, if you do one of these things on a day that you feel stuck, the world will feel like a better place. And he said, go for a walk and come back with an idea. Introduce two people who don't know one another. Say thanks to somebody. And he listed out about 10 different things. And he said, if you do one of these things, he said, now don't do them all today, but he said, if you do one of these things every day, at the end of the year, you have an army of people who will support your cause. And so what I want everybody to do is, can everybody just stand up, please? Just everybody stand up. And can you just turn around and face people, so don't just look this way. So face everybody else, like look at people. And what I want you to do is, I want you to get somebody in your eye line that you don't know. There's not that many of us, so just talk to that person, introduce yourself, shake their hand, and tell them what you're up to and why you're at Dublin Masterclass. So say hello to a stranger. Hi, Sebastian. How are you? Nice to meet you. So where are you Okay, you want to resume your seats? It's like in football parlance, everybody has touched football now, okay? So it's terrible when you go to an event and everybody just sits there and people go, I want to be on Twitter and I don't want to talk to anybody. So it's good to, as Bob Hoskins once said, it's good to talk. So Matilda's going to hand out a piece of paper now, and this is my boomerang into the room. So this is an evaluation sheet of my input into this morning, and when I'm finished, if you could just, if you can fill this out at the end of the session and hand it back. And we have a little ebook that we'll email on to you next week. So if you fill out the evaluation sheet, we'll give on the ebook. So if you want to hand it out there, Matilda. Okay, so just a little bit about me and the work that I do. I run a company called MediaHQ.com, and I took over the company 9 years ago, and it was a printed media directory, so it was a book. And this was the first edition of it that I took over, and pretty quickly we realised that selling books to access media intelligence for people wasn't going to work, and we set about, after about a year, to create Media HQ, and it took 14 months to build the web platform to help people reach out to journalists, and a couple of weeks ago we broke the 100,000 share mark. So in 6 years since we built it, 100,000 stories and press releases have been shared by our clients, and from having an analog resource that didn't really work to a digital resource to people, and on a busy day our clients share about 200 press releases through the site. And you get to see a lot of different stories. So I know some people here are Irish and some people aren't, but just by way of the sort of people we work for, universities like UCC, we work for the Houses of Parliament, big charities like the Cancer Society, commercial organisations like the Bank of Ireland and Paddy Power, and all of these places use Media HQ to distribute press information. So how does it work? People who work in communications and marketing need to get stories out on a kind of a daily and a weekly basis. So they use Media HQ, and in one of the ways you can use it is you can use it to distribute email to people. So you can build a list, an email list of journalists, and you can distribute straight to journalists, and you can distribute through the platform from your own email address. You can also connect it into social media, and you can have your own story page on MediaHQ.com. And I suppose the sum total of all of those things is that you will connect with an audience at the end of the day. We also have a product called Galzac's Guide, which is an expert sources directory, where we gather experts from all over the world, and we connect them with journalists through a resource. Okay, so there was spin mentioned in the title of the session, and I want to show you my spin credentials. So there you go, that's me. That's about 17 years ago, and I started off my career. There you go, grey hair, a beard, a lot of stress, small business, a family. That's what they'll do to colour your hair. And it's funny, I was 25 when I started working with politicians, and a lot of my time was spent on the wrong side of a media scrum. And I joke with my staff now, we're all in their mid-20s, don't spend your 20s worrying about whether a government is going to stand or fall. Go to a nightclub, meet some strangers, have a laugh. So what I'm going to talk about this morning is I'm going to talk about how to create insanely relevant content. And I'm going to break it down into three particular areas. So VIP are the letters I'm going to use, and they stand for vision, ideas, and platform. And if you fill out the evaluation sheet, I'll send you on a deck of slides, so don't worry. So vision, ideas, and platform. So the first one is vision. And there are two sorts of companies in the world. There's a sort of company that produces lettuce, and there's a sort of company that produces apples. And you've got to decide what business are you in. Are you in the lettuce business, or are you in the apples business? So let's start with the lettuce business. And if you're in the lettuce business, if you grow lettuce and you're a farmer and you decide you're going to grow lettuce, you get lettuce really quickly. In a few months you'll have a full crop of lettuce. And what are your options? You can supply salads, and you can supply sandwiches. Anyone for lettuce soup? No, I don't think so. So your options are pretty much limited if you're in the lettuce business. So if you want to get big really quickly, your options are going to be limited. But if you're in the apple business, if you grow a crop of apples, it takes 5 years from the start to have a full crop. And I think one of the big things with web and that is that people want to do it really quickly. They want to find some dodgy person on the far side of the world that's going to give them 100,000 followers really quickly. And in the apple business, it takes 5 years. But at the end of the 5 years, you've got a whole lot of options. So you can supply to people who bake apple tarts. You maybe can make apple juice. Maybe you're going to be really adventurous and get into the cider business. Or maybe there's yogurts and maybe there's ice cream. So web, you should be in it for the long haul. And every platform that you start using, there will be a day when you have one follower or one person engaged, and you can grow it incrementally. The other big thing is that a lot of people have a problem with this when it comes to web is that vision means you know the end result and you know why you're doing what you're doing. And people come up and they say, oh, we need to do something on Facebook, or we need to do something on Instagram, and it's such a bad strategy. You need to have something amazing to say on Instagram first. So maybe start with that first. So why are you in business? And we rebranded recently to MediaHQ.com, and one of the things we did was we went back and we had to look at what was the actual reason, what was the purpose that we were in business. And we wrote this thing called the Storyteller's Manifesto. And our mission is to help people to tell amazing stories. That's the purpose of the business. So what's the Storyteller's Manifesto? Always remember the true power of communications. It changes people's minds and gets them to act. Everyone is creative. To have better ideas, you need to practice creativity every day. And so it goes on. Every religion in the world has a weekly and monthly service. And people stand up at that service and they say, this is what I believe in. Businesses are really bad at it. And they go kind of really unfocused and they get obsessed with a tool or a platform. If you know and have a belief in what you want to achieve, then you can achieve it really well. This guy is called Simon Sinek. Simon Sinek is a brilliant TED Talk, and he's written a book called The Power of Why. Start with why. And it's based on this really simple idea. Most businesses and companies and organizations know what they do. They know how they do it, what's their differentiating value proposition, what makes them better than the next company. But very few organizations know why they do what they do. But the people who know why they do what they do can achieve amazing things. He uses the example of the Wright brothers. They solved man-powered flight. They weren't the best resourced, they didn't have the biggest team, but they were the most committed. Martin Luther King wasn't the only human rights activist in the States in the mid to late 60s, but he was the most committed. He had the purest message, and most people believed him. If you can have a compelling why, you'll solve an awful lot of problems. So that's the vision piece. And the days I struggle, I think if I had better ideas today, my life would be an awful lot easier. And look, think about that. And that moves us along nice and neatly to ideas. The biggest problem with ideas is that people don't make time to think. And we live in a world that, and I joked about digital distraction earlier on, but digital distraction is the bane of most people's lives. Do one thing for me today: stop bringing your phone to bed. It's a really weird thing. People bring their phone to bed now. Stop doing it. Go to an electrical shop and buy a clock alarm, and set it to classical music and wake up to classical music. It's a really good idea, and decide how you're going to practice creativity for the next 7 days. And if you went to the gym once a month, you'd probably get a heart attack on the third time. People spend their lives really addled and really busy, and they make time for a whole host of things, but they don't make time for creativity. And turn the phone on airplane mode. There's certain places that I'm really creative. I'm really creative on trains, and I love this notion of being on a train, hurtling through the countryside at like 250 miles an hour, and not taking a phone call because it's people ever really annoy you on the train. I can't hear you. No, because you're going at 250 miles an hour and there's no signal. Well, we can hear you, and you're really annoying us. So, but how can you practice creativity? You need to practice it. The busy are the enemies of the purposeful. Remember that when you go to work, right? The busy are the enemies of the purposeful. People get to a point in their careers when they get to 36 or 37, and some people get a really big chip on their shoulder because they see other people advancing in companies, and then they realise that the people who advance in the world are the people that realise the power of being purposeful. And it doesn't really matter what you do, it's the impact that you make that matters to people. And if you can figure that out, we have a weekly meeting in our company when everybody comes in, and they have to say the 3 items of purpose that they have to achieve that week. And we have a meeting on Friday, and I'll say, how did you get on with your... And you'll get called out of that meeting if you say, I don't want to hear the job you've got to do. Would you like me to bore you with the 50 things that are on my checklist? What do you want to achieve this week? So what is the purpose that you want to bring to the organisation? There's a brilliant talk from John Cleese on creativity from 1989. And in that talk, John Cleese, he says that he reviewed all of the available research, and the most startling fact was that creative people aren't any cleverer than any of the rest of us, but they have a way of operating. And the creativity isn't, it's not talent, it's a way of operating. And it's a completely profound thing. So I have a friend who's a musician. When he wants to get something out there, he practices. He goes to a studio. He locks himself away for 3 weeks. Paul Auster wrote one of his best books. He went to a room every day for 6 weeks. He took the Wi-Fi card out of his computer, he put super glue in the Ethernet port of the computer, and the computer was chained to the desk in a room with no window. Sounds very kind of harsh, but he wrote the book, and it was a bestseller, and that's what he needed to do to be creative. He had a way to do it. I go to a coffee shop that's near the office, I've got a big set of headphones that says, even if I know you, I really don't want to talk to you. Okay? I'm really a hearing body only, and I'm concentrating on something. Can't you see that I'm concentrating? And it works. And or I find a coffee shop that nobody knows me, and I'll go and I'll lock myself away. Because if you don't do that, this is what you're going to look like. And we've all felt like this. You get to Friday around 4 o'clock, and you feel like someone's punched you in the head. Like you really do. You feel like, what sort of a mad life have I had since Monday morning? So, and the things that you invest in with creativity will pay off. Any good ideas that I have, they could last me a year, they could last me 6 months, but like they keep coming back. Good ideas have that way of keep generating stuff. So what makes a great idea? Anybody remember this show?
Yes.
Oh, Dawson's Creek. I used to like Pacey. I used to love the way Pacey was one of those guys that he used to, he was like someone who swallowed the dictionary. Man, it's so categorical. Just say stuff like that all the time. But emotion makes a great idea. And like the clients that we have that connect the best stuff on social use emotional content. And they come from I have my own views on the world, but I represent a platform that distributes information. So like sometimes I look on there and I'm horrified at the stuff people are sharing. Like people are sharing stuff that are, and I love that. I love the fact that like I can facilitate stuff that I don't agree with. And that's like if the postman didn't like what's in the letters, we probably wouldn't get a lot of our posts. You know what I mean? Thank God he doesn't get to choose. But Dogs Trust, who help house rescue dogs, are clients of ours, and stuff that they share on an emotional level. We did a campaign this time last year. And on one day in January, 50 dogs were abandoned. 51 dogs were abandoned on a particular day in January. And they did, in the November of that year, they cut out life-size posters of 51 dogs and they put them along the canal on the way into Dublin. And they wrote the reason underneath each animal why they were abandoned. And it nearly broke Twitter like for a morning because people were on their way to work and they saw it. But it just was emotional content that pulled at the heartstrings. And if there's emotion in it, it becomes magnetic. And like this, we all strive to create a meme. And what is a meme? An idea, behaviour, or style that spreads from person to person within a culture. And that's kind of what we want to try and create. That's the kind of ultimate goal for what we're trying to create when we're doing content. When the baseball is thrown at 150 miles an hour, the reason that it fits the glove is that the glove is designed to fit the ball. The glove is designed to fit the ball. Think about that for a second. If that ball had if there was a big square thing in the middle of it, the guy would probably break his hand when he went to catch it. And what happens with a lot of content is, the content isn't made to fit the audience. So it just doesn't connect. And people are trying to put a square peg into a round hole. So when you look at a huge crowd of people, one of the things that really good people who create content for audiences online are really good at is they know who they're talking to. So they're not talking to the 3,000 people in the frame, and they're not even talking to the maybe 100 people in this frame, and they're not even talking to the 20 people in this frame. They're talking to the guys with the weird hats, okay? And they look at the frame with the 3,000 people in it, and they know that their audience are the people with the weird hats. MailChimp, who we all know, who are really successful, have a whole side thing on called Hats for Cats. And it was done as a kind of a weird marketing thing. And it's a complete huge business on its own now. And they make hats for cats. And there was a woman there's a woman basically who used to just knit the hats for cats, and she lives in Thailand. And I think she now employs about 30 people knitting hats for cats as part of MailChimp's marketing strategy. But it is that thing to know, who exactly in the audience are you talking to, and how are you reaching out to them and connecting with them? Steve Jobs was a complete genius, and back to Seth Godin, who we started with at the start. And Seth Godin, if you Google this, you'll find it, but a brilliant blog post called "Who is Your Customer?" And the opening line of it was, Apple had one customer. He died a couple of years ago. And there's a brilliant book about product development in Apple called Inside Steve's Brain. And in that book, they describe the process, the kind of insane process by which they used to create products. Whereas if it was good enough for Steve, it was good enough for everybody else. And that's about having an innate instinct for your audience. And when I have rows with my content team, and we go through this process, I say, I can't be the only one in the room that has an innate instinct for the audience. Everybody has to have it. And how do you do that? You read the right things, you know what they want, you're consuming the right information, and you're developing an instinct for what people want. This is my local paper at home in Galway. It's called the Connacht Tribune. And one of the things that tunes people in really regularly into what is insanely relevant to an audience is local media. So if it happens in a particular geographic area, then the people who live in that area will want to know about it. And what you need to do with trying to find stuff that's insanely relevant is think, okay, I completely get the filter of local to make something insanely relevant. What other filters will work to make content insanely relevant? And look at a local paper and deconstruct it, or a local radio and deconstruct it, and figure out the things that work and that are relevant to an audience. The other thing you can do to be insanely relevant is you can build what we call form content. So you can build types of content that are written to a formula or produced to a formula that are relevant to the audience, that you can switch the content out in all of the time. So by way of example, this is just some of the stuff that we would have shared on LinkedIn, but we do stuff, so if you go to the top right hand corner, a Christmas book list. So we would share a blog post about, do you need to get a book out for Christmas? We have media lists of book reviewers, and here's a blog post talking about covering this. But it could be a features book list, it could be a Halloween features book list, it could be a summer features book list. We do things like in the bottom right hand corner, featured journalist. So we'll take a journalist who we have intelligence on, we'll write a blog post. Communications and PR people are interested in that. The journalist themselves is delighted to get a mention. Sometimes you'll pick somebody who's got strong social influence, so they might have 10,000 followers on Twitter, and they'll share it out with their audience. So, but you can go with those sort of content, and you can go to a content team and say, this week's featured journalist is X, and we're going to write a blog post on a media list about this, and you can teach people how to do that. And if you can build that understanding into a group, then you can strive for other pieces of content of higher learning. So this is really important. If you care, they will care, right? And if you're creating any sort of content for digital, rule 101, if you think it's crap, everyone will think it's crap times 10. If your heart sinks into your shoes, everybody else's heart will sink into their shoes. So we had a brilliant online newsletter at the start, and we used to have a rule. We brought the rule back in recently. If you don't like it, it's not going up. If it doesn't excite you, it's not going to excite anybody else. So if you like it, if you care, they will care. If you love it, so will they. So if you're proud and really love the piece of content and the piece of things you're sharing, so will everybody else. And like if you have a bit of, or someone's suggesting something that you think's a bit off, you've got to put the foot down and kind of say that to people. So 3 things that we look for in content. What's it about? Why is it relevant to the audience? And what's the headline? So if someone suggests any sort of web content to be shared on our platform, we say to people, what's it about? Why is it relevant to the audience? And can you give it to me in a single line? And if you can't answer those 3 questions really quickly, you don't have permission to go any further with it. Don't come to me with 10 paragraphs and say I'm going to write the headline at the end. It's not going to work. Okay, so what's the goal when you create content for sharing online? Can you measure it? Can you track the success of it? And can you repeat it? So, can you measure what's going to happen? Can you track the outcome? So if you create a piece of content, are you going to be able to track it to find the results? And there's all sorts of brilliant web tracking tools now. We use a thing called leads forensics. So if we create a piece of content and put it up there, we can tell you who's clicking on it, and we can tell you where they're from. So that if we create a piece of content that we want to be insanely relevant to a target audience, and people click on it, we can tell you who's clicking on it. And that'll inform our marketing. So the last one then is platform. And I started by saying that people sometimes get this wrong, and they don't start with the vision, they don't start with the ideas, they start with the platform. And some genius says, we need to do something on Facebook. And it's very much the cart in front of the horse. It's the last thing that you should be doing. And the 3 spark points on the platform are, when people see something, they think, this is a new voice, I haven't heard this before. I've been thinking this forever and you're articulating it, or I never thought of this before. So these are the things on social media that we kind of gravitate towards. This is new, I thought this, but no one has ever said it, or I've never thought this before. And one of the things, there's a rule of 6 about how to be really good on web platforms. And we're coming up to Christmas now, and I'm a particularly Irish person, so the way to my heart is definitely through my stomach. So if I get invited to a party, I love that. And imagine going to a party and going into the corner of a room, and there's one person that exists in everybody's group of friends where people aren't quite sure how they got there. Someone who people just don't particularly like. And you're to spend the night with that person, and it's awful. And what is that person like? They're selfish, they talk about themselves all the time, they're socially awkward, they don't have anything interesting to say. Some people become that person. They're normal people, but they become that person when they go online. So there's 6 ways to build a platform. Rule number 1 is if you can be first with information. So if you're here today and you're hearing absolutely amazing stuff and you're putting it up on Twitter and nobody else is on Twitter in the room, then you're first and you're ahead of everybody else. So that's one. And sometimes when I go to international conferences, I'll tweet stuff out to the hashtag and it'll work really, really well, and I'll be ahead of everybody else. Can you be helpful? So can you help people? And these are the traits of a normal, well-balanced human being. So can you be helpful? Have you got a particular type of knowledge that you can share with people? Are you making your own stuff? So have you a strategy to make stuff on your own blog or on your own platform? So what are you making? Because most digital platforms are just an embassy to bring people back to where you're making it yourself. What are you sharing? And are you sharing stuff in context? So sharing stuff in context is, I read this today, I saw this today, it's really amazing, you should check it out. And if you share stuff in context, an awful lot more, rather than just lashing up a link and not giving any context to it at all. Are you consistent? So there's no point in Facebooking your head off for 3 weeks and then abandoning the whole thing. So what are you doing on a regular basis to be consistent? Finally, how do we connect? And I think this is really interesting. This is an equation for how people connect on the internet and how they connect in life, actually. And we connect in 5s, 15s, 50s, and 150s. So the 5-year family, they're the closest people to you. And people think that by creating something viral, that it just, everybody loves it. This is how something becomes viral. So your 5-year close family. Your 15 are what's called your emotional support group. And the way you know who's in the 15, if any one of these 15 died, you'd be devastated. That's the easiest way to describe what they are. And they're kind of your wider family, your siblings, and your extended family. Your 50 are your friends. These are the people that you know. These are the people that you check in with regularly. And they're your group of friends that you would check in with once every couple of months and that you would know really, really, really well. And the 50 then is what the amount of people that you'd invite to an Irish wedding. And 50, 100 to 150. The 150 is a really crucial number because it's the number of which one village used to become 2 villages. It's the amount that's in an army battalion. It's when company structures, it's about as much people as you can manage in one group at any one time. And these are the way that information is shared. Who influences us? We're influenced by strong ties. So that if you put stuff up on the internet and it starts being shared, it's being shared in 5, 15, 50, and 150. Who's going to pull the lever on it first? The people who really share the stuff all of the time. And they're going to send it out, and then it's just going to go out like that in those pockets throughout the internet. A poor headline is going to render any content you have invisible. And I have changed my processes over the years, and I'm really in the land of click, in the land of poor attention. Unless you can come to and I sat down with my content team on Friday and I went through stuff, and there's one person on my team who's really brilliant, but she always tries to write the book. She always tries to write the book. And we were analysing the content and we were analysing the data for the week. And I was explaining to her that she wrote a couple of great blog posts, but they performed like at a quarter of some of the other ones. So I said, you put in a huge amount of effort in that, and it got a quarter of the content. And I said, that headline is great, but that could be your first book. I said, it shouldn't always be a book. Last point, there's a lot of talk about the internet and about negativity. The most powerful currency in the web that I have encountered since I started is positivity. And if you can meet people and say good things to them and pass on good vibes, it generates really, really good karma. This woman is called Gracie Otto, and on Tuesday night I was in Brussels this week giving a talk and a workshop. And on Tuesday night I went back to my hotel room and I was working late, and there was this brilliant documentary about a guy called Michael White, who was a film producer, impresario, kind of modern day lunatic, who kind of just knew everybody in Hollywood. And the documentary was made by Gracie Otto, and I sent her this tweet. Well done, even though I meant to say touching as opposed to touchy film, but she didn't care. And she came back to me like within seconds saying, I love Michael White, isn't he cool? As Kate Moss says, they don't make them like that anymore. So like there's me and Gracie Otto talking about Kate Moss in a tweet like 5 minutes later, you know, getting down with it. And that was because I said something nice to her. Last story, I was coming out of the centre of Brussels on Wednesday evening. I had an hour to spare and I walked down through the middle of the city, and I'm walking up to the middle of the town and it's raining, and I see a journalist doing a piece to camera, and it's lashing rain, and he's a video journalist, so he's doing everything himself, and it's this guy, his name is Sean McEntee, and he works for the national broadcaster RTE, and I don't know Sean, but he kind of clocked me and I clocked him, and I stopped, and I was due to meet a colleague of his in Brussels, and it got cancelled, and we just swapped pleasantries. He said, I'm trying to do this piece to camera, and I'm getting soaked, and I'm messing it up, and just swapped pleasantries. So about 5 minutes later, I was really wet, and I wanted to get a bar of chocolate. So I bought this really nice Belgian chocolate, and I sent him a tweet. I don't know the guy at all. I said, nice to meet you, hope you didn't get too wet, go get chocolate. I did, and he tweeted me back the next day. And we made a connection, and like literally, like I think the point with digital and web sometimes is that if you can make a physical connection with people, and I'm hoping I'll make a connection with some of the people in the room here today. So work on your vision, spend time generating ideas, and bring some common sense to how you're going to build your platforms and connect with people. I'll hand you over to Ellen.
What I wanted to do this morning, good morning, I'm Ellen Gunning from the Irish Academy of Public Relations, and what I wanted to do was give you an idea about PR, one specific element of public relations. I wanted to look at radio and television interviews, what you say and how you say it. Because I think people get it very wrong. I think if you're in the business of working on the web, if you work in film, if you produce a product that you want people to know about, then part of your job is to jump up and down and say, look at me, I have really interesting things to tell you, please talk to me, please interview me. And I think what people forget is that you can get it as wrong as you can get it right. So I thought I'd give you some of the examples as we flashed through this morning. So let me see if this technology works. It's about the message, but it's about getting the right message out there. Really, when you start looking at public relations, you start looking at doing any promotion for yourself, or the films or the series that you're involved in, you start by looking at what do I actually want to tell people and how do I tell them. If you pitch to somebody for money, if you go in to look for funding for a film, or you go in to look for a bank loan from the bank manager, you spend an awful lot of time figuring out what do I say to this dude when I get there. So I get 5 minutes and they say, okay, so who are you, what do you want? So I want a mortgage for my house. So you prep like mad. You think, how many questions can they ask me? What can they ask me that I can't actually answer? How do I make sure that I go in and I do this brilliant pitch that says, you really want to lend me money? So that at the end of it all, he shakes your hand and says, can we do anything else for you today? That's the object of the exercise. If you do an interview, any interview, no matter how short, the object of the exercise is exactly the same. How can I leave the audience saying, wow, awesome, amazing. I want to see that piece of footage, I want to meet that guy, I want to go to hear that talk, I want to buy that product. So getting the right message out there, figuring out what exactly is it that you're trying to say to people. Take time to craft the message. People are quite flippant about talking. If you talk to people on a mobile phone, I do a radio show on Dublin City FM, and I much prefer interviewing people in studio because they concentrate more. If they're not coming into studio, I ask them if they have a landline that I can talk to them on. Because we all talk on a mobile. It's amazing, you interview somebody on a mobile, they sound like they're doing something that they shouldn't be doing in the middle of the day. Either that or they sound like they're climbing a mountain, one or the other. People don't stop, they go, yeah, I'm walking down Grafton Street. It's a media interview, you're not talking to me, you're talking to everybody who listens. Sit, find the time, craft the message. You can very easily be misunderstood if you answer a question flippantly and don't take enough time. Let me give you the rules and then I want to give you some examples. Common to both radio and television interviews. Know your audience. It's exactly what Jack was saying about, we go after the guys with the furry hats. Who are you talking to? If you look at a documentary on Film 4, if you look at a documentary on BBC 4, as opposed to a documentary on TV3, is there any connection between the two of them, other than the word documentary? Probably not. If you watch TV3, you find that the documentaries actually do, you know that American style of, so you want to make a cup of coffee, let me start all over again and tell you. This is Mary, this is what she's been doing, this is how it's been happening. And the next time they come back, they say, okay, so let me tell you where we're at. And personally, I'd rather stab myself with a fork in the eye. It drives me insane, like I've been watching all along. Get me to the end of the story. BBC4 by comparison, just tells you the story. So if you went off to make coffee, that's your problem. Catch up. So know your audience. Who's listening, how are they listening, or how are they watching? What do you want out of the interview? Why are you giving an interview? I know we're all egotists, and we all have to talk about me, that's fine. But actually, what's the object of the exercise? Do you want people to attend something? Do you want to leave people with an overall impression that you have now made 6 movies? Do you want to tell people that you're changing direction? You used to do horror and now you're doing love stories. What do you want them to know? So why are you doing the interview? Who set it up for you and what do they want? I sent out an email to a woman at one stage and I said, roughly this is what I want to talk to you about. And her PA came back to me and said, okay, she's not going to do that interview. Let me tell you the interview that she'll give you. And I have an attitude problem. So I said, okay, I'll tell you what to do. Forget the whole thing, because if she doesn't do the interview that I want to give, I don't actually want to do the interview that she wants to give. And she said, well, actually, she doesn't want to talk about X, Y, and Z. And I said, well, if you read the bloody email, you'll find I don't want to talk about X, Y, and Z either. And actually what happened was she got the email in and said, okay, yeah, I'm interested in giving an interview. Tell them what I'll talk about. It's amazing how important people get. That I'll do what I want to do. This is not an ad. This is an interview. You don't do what you want to do. You do what the radio or the television station wants to do. But if you're clever, you get what you want out of it. So what did the interviewer want out of it? Why do they ask you on? They give you a hint. And if they give you the hint, fulfill it for them. It means they'll ask you back again. So they're asking you on because they want to talk to you about how you funded this particular web series that you're doing. You don't particularly want to talk about the funding at all. You want to talk about the series and who's in it and something else. But at the back of your head you say, fine, they want to talk about funding. I must remember before I finish that I say, and by the way, fascinating little story to tell you about funding, because their audience, they figure, wants to know about funding. So pay them back the respect. Know something about the journalists and their background, their style of questions. I interviewed a man on radio. I better not identify him too carefully. But I interviewed a man on radio who was Scottish, I will admit to that much. And he did these kind of reality shows. And when I first interviewed him, I said, nice to meet you. And I had all the briefing notes in front of me. Nice to meet you, nice to talk to you. You're the man who chose, and it was something like Romeo and Juliet. You know, these television series for find the people who play the lead parts in the theatre productions. And I said, you're the man who chose Romeo and Juliet. No, I am not. This from an interviewer's point of view, is a terrible way to start an interview. I've now asked a question that somebody gave me a negative response to. So my research looks like it's sloppy. And I said, oh, I'm very sorry. I thought you'd actually chosen it. No, I was part of a panel of people who chose it. Okay, a bit pedantic. We're getting his style. I didn't know his style. Second question was, and the theatre show actually opens next Monday. No.
Oh my God.
I'm trying to shoot the researcher, okay? My notes definitely said it was starting next Monday. No, the previews are on Monday. The show starts on Wednesday. So by the time we got to the third question, I was now looking through the glass at the team inside going, and I'm asking a question and going, no. Right, in anticipation, and every single question was no. When we finished the interview, my colleague who actually is Scottish, who was producing the show, blipped in and said, on behalf of everybody else from Scotland, I wish to apologise for that, and his entire attitude to the interview. But I spoke to a friend of mine about 3 days later and said, did you hear the interview with that guy? And she said, yeah. And I said, oh, I still don't know if I should have smacked him when I was on air. I still don't know if I should have said, I know you're going to tell me that the answer is no, but amuse me anyway. What is it? Because I was really annoyed. And she said, yeah, you didn't watch any of his stuff, did you, on television when they were choosing this Romeo and Juliet thing? And I said, no, just no. But he answers everything with no. That's his style. He says no first, and then he answers. Do you remember when Mary Robinson was interviewed? When she was running, you probably don't, when she was running for president, Mary Robinson was interviewed. They did a piece in Hot Press magazine where they asked her questions that she answered yes to and then followed it with a no. So I don't know what her position was, but say, do you approve of divorce in Ireland? Yes. No, I've never approved of divorce in Ireland. Do you approve of abortion, whatever? And everything was yes. And then she would answer. And her defense was, I always say yes because I'm a lawyer and it indicates that I have understood the question. Oh, it weren't that difficult. But the funny thing was she'd been doing it for years and nobody had actually printed it. But the first time it was printed, it became confusing. Prepare answers to the questions that you want to be asked. This is back to why are you there? So somebody says, the opening question is, so tell me, you have a 4-minute interview. 4 minutes is a long time on radio. So in 4 minutes, tell me, how did you get into making movies for the web or making series for the web? This whole area just fascinates me. Now it may well fascinate them, and they want to know. But your brain is saying, I am not going to waste my 4 minutes telling you a fascinating story about me and how I got into making series on the web. What I actually want to do is tell you about the series I'm making at the moment on the web. So you answer the question you wanted to be asked, and you say, oh my God, I've been fascinated by movies since I was a child. I studied movies in my 20s, and look at me now. I'm 35, and I've just created my first web series. It's all, can I tell you about it? It's amazing. But you've given them 30 seconds of, here's my history. I was born, I studied, I now make movies. But you've moved it on to what you wanted to talk about. So answer the question you wanted to be asked. Key rules on radio, choose your words very carefully. People listen to radio. They watch television, it sounds obvious, but they listen to radio. And there are loads of people who just listen and listen to the specific words you use, and I'm convinced do it in order to be upset by you. My favourite one of all time was, I gave a presentation at one stage, probably about 3 years ago, and I said part of what everybody needs to do is get together and just have a really intensive conversation with each other, a really intensive, what's the word I'm looking for? Brainstorming session. And a woman came up to me afterwards and she said, I cannot believe you do that. I'm appalled that you would use that expression. It's horrific, it's blah, blah. And after a while I said to her, I'm sorry, I'm terribly slow. I said, what word did I use? And she said, brainstorming. I said, okay, I didn't realise there was a problem using brainstorming. She said, nobody uses brainstorming anymore because it's upsetting to people who have cerebral issues. We now say, any ideas? No, that actually sounds kind of a bit groovy. Mind managing is, we have an ideas shower. How wimpish can you get? But what happens with your words is you use one word and that's all people hear. They remember the word they keep focusing on. So choose your words carefully. 3 key points, you cannot cover more than 3 key points in an interview unless they're going to give you a 1-hour show. If they're giving you an interview on either radio or television, you go in with 3 key points that you want to cover. On radio, you can actually write them down. We had a client in New York at one stage. We were over for Patrick's Day, and we were over doing, I think it was 17 radio stations on the morning of Patrick's Day. And I had written down 3 key points on 17 sheets of paper and said to him, I know it's boring, but as you do each one has a different radio station in front of it. So it had NYBC, you're talking to Johnny, here are the 3 points. And he said to me, I really don't need these. And I said, humour me, just use them. And after about the 4th interview, he found that he couldn't remember, was he talking to Johnny or Mary? Had he actually said this earlier? Because you're literally going from one interview to another. That's where you want to be. But 3 key points, you can't make any more. Answer all the other questions. But if you had 3 things you wanted to tell somebody, and the interview ended, and you hadn't told them the 3, you goofed, not them. They didn't know what your 3 points were. You knew what they were. So 3 key points, no more. Listen carefully. Don't allow an implication to rest. People are very good at creating an impression about you or creating an implication. Somebody says, this is your first series that you produced for the web? And you say, it is actually, and they say, that's lovely. I suppose everybody has to start somewhere. What they've just said is, it's probably rubbish. That's what I heard anyway as the listener. Everybody has to start somewhere. They didn't say, it's amazing, it's brilliant, it's whatever. Your answer has to be something like, do you know what Tarantino's first series was? You've got to have an answer back that says, and make it like, this is how he started. Now, hey baby, Tarantino is quaking in his boots. He heard that I've made this and he wants to watch it. So watch it, don't allow an implication to rest. Be careful, pick it up, change it. And your PR perspective. PR perspective as in bringing in a PR person. So if somebody is in charge of looking after public relations, it's my job to make sure that we promote the film or the series that you've just brought in. And I say to you as an actor or producer, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create publicity for you. I will use my contacts to get you access to radio and television and print. And your job is to do X. So your job is, we had it with somebody who shall remain nameless, an actor quite a few years ago. And I said to him, the only thing that we want back from you is that you name the charity. The proceeds of the opening night, the gala evening, are going to. That's all I want. But I lined up a whole series of interviews from the very first interview that he did was on national radio. He had about 8 or 9 minutes, and he never mentioned the charity once. Not once. We finished, it came into a break time, and I honestly believe if we're giving you, VR's job is to give you the lifeblood of publicity, your job is to wake up, smell the coffee, pay attention, and do the only thing you were asked to do. It's not that difficult, just name the charity. So we came out into an ad break, I stuck my head into the studio and said, thanks very much to the presenter, really appreciate it. Not that we never got to mention the charity, don't worry about it. Fantastic interview, really enjoyed it. He picked up on it straight away and said, who's the charity, who are the proceeds going to? No problem, I'll mention it. So he came back and said, welcome back, and that film is premiering on. But we came out afterwards and I said to the actor, you didn't mention the charity. Now he's wired, okay, he's in the zone. Now believe me, I understand egos, I'm from public relations, okay. PR people have huge egos, and I know actors have big egos. But they also act, they perform, you know, they get a script, they work to it. And he came out and said, yeah, I know, it's just one of those things, I was in the zone, what did you do? I get it right next time. And I said, no, I'm now going to pull every other interview I have with you because I can't trust you. I don't mind that you talk about yourself, I don't mind that you talk about me, I don't care what you talk about. But the only thing you had to talk about was the charity. And it's really easy from your point of view, by the way. You do get dug in, you do forget that time has run out. So what you actually start by saying is, very first question, you think, I've got to get the charity in here now. Very first question. So what's the story with this movie? Oh, isn't it amazing? We're premiering next Thursday, and the charity that's getting all the proceeds is such and such. I love them. Now you've done your job, now go talk about yourself. Okay? We'll cut off your lifeblood, which is publicity, and we'll do it very easily. Take advantage of the interviewer. Emmett Stagg, it's back to listening again. Emmett Stagg was Minister with responsibility for the environment. He was interviewed by Richard Crowley on radio one morning, it was Morning Ireland, so they interview very fast. So Minister, tell us, I think it was about the trees in, where was it, in Wicklow that they were chopping down. There was a row of trees that were going to be chopped down, it was 20 trees, and the whole country was talking about it. So Crowley started off and he said, well, Minister, you're going to chop down the trees. What's the story? And Emmett Stagg said, well, you see, what you need to understand from a government point of view is, Minister, the question is very simple. Are you chopping down the trees or not? Are the trees going to be chopped down? From an environmental perspective, we need to look at, no, we don't want the broad picture, we don't want the environmental perspective. And he just kept hammering at him. And eventually he said to a minister, it's a very simple question. Are you going to answer it? And Stagg responded and said, I will if you shut up and listen to me. And I thought, wow, 10-0 Emmett Stagg. Because actually what happened was he had asked the question so fast that he really hadn't given him a chance to answer back. And what we got was a party political broadcaster on behalf of the Labour Party and how wonderful they were, and we wouldn't have an environment only for them. Choose your words carefully. Harry Crosby. Harry Crosby, who started off in transport, who owned, I think most of it's now in Navan, but who owned Three Arena as it is now, it was the Point Depot originally when he created it. He created the Bord Gosh Energy Theatre. Fantastic entrepreneur. When he started developing the north side of Dublin, very derelict area, very poor area, not an awful lot of money in it. He gave an interview to Gay Byrne on the Late Late Show, and Gay Byrne said, when you're working in the north inner city, you're working in the docks area, and he said, I am, and people seem to think that they eat their young there. It was a real casual throwaway remark. He meant people don't like going into the area, they don't feel safe, they don't feel comfortable. And Gay Byrne's response, he said, people think they eat their young there, and Gay Byrne's response was, they be animals. I know, and he carried on. Now Gay Byrne's response was just acknowledging that that is the perception. What happened was that the only thing anybody on the north side of Dublin remembered about Harry Crosby, who was trying to bring business into the area, who was building it up, who was creating an enormous amount of employment and commercial enterprise, was that he thought people in that area ate their young. That's not what he said.
Yeah.
But that became the story. So be very careful. Choose your words very carefully. And be aware of the interviewer's agenda. Have you actually heard the interview? How many people heard the interview live with Brian Cowan, that famous interview that he gave?
Not live, but
Not live. Heard it live. Okay, have a listen to this and tell me what you think and see if I can get this working. I'm doing something with this.
Click on the actual,
There.
Go Whitefield Falls Autumn Gathering continuing today. We've just been joined by Party Leader Brian Camp. Taoiseach, good morning.
Morning.
And thanks for coming over before your breakfast. Now, we all expected €3 billion of cuts in one shape or other in the budget. Now we hear it may be more. What's going on?
Well, there's nothing going on. It just brought the Minister of Finance.
What happened at the start of the interview? No, what did the interviewer say? Because it was the bit that really struck me. I was sitting in traffic on the Slaughter dual carriageway waiting to get into town, and what I heard was, "Thank you for joining us before breakfast." He specifically came back and said, "Thank you for joining us before breakfast." So I'm sitting in traffic at 8:45 in the morning. That's an interviewer's agenda. I'm sitting in traffic at 8:45 thinking, what the hell? I run a small business and I breakfast at 6 a.m. He's running the country and he hasn't had breakfast at 8:45. So I'm automatically now feeling quite negative about the interview. He's now on a back foot. The interviewer, I have no doubt, was there waiting for, had probably been told that Taoiseach could be available at 7:30, it'd be 8:45, it'd be 8 o'clock, and was as thick as two sharp planks because he'd been waiting all morning. And where are we going to get this guy? Because his agenda is, I want to interview the Taoiseach before 9 o'clock, before the programme goes off air. But the interviewer definitely had an agenda. He set him up so that no matter what he said afterwards, it was going to be taken negatively. Now, he did a very bad interview. I'm not disputing that at all. But interestingly enough, and Jack was talking about Twitter, interestingly enough, the interview, I actually thought he was depressed. I thought he was genuinely clinically depressed. I thought, my God, that man is like, he's really told us all that the country's going to hell in a handcart. He's like, for the Taoiseach, there is no hope. And Simon Coveney tweeted, was the Taoiseach drunk? What was going on? And that took over Twitter. So why was he confused about which words he was using? The rules for television. So on radio, people are listening very carefully. Your words are very important. Rules for television, very different. Your words are actually less important. It's how you look. So, how do you look when you're saying something? Are you sincere? Are you bored? Are you distracted? We all do it. We look at people, it doesn't matter that this is the only television interview that they're ever going to do. We look at it and go, oh, for God's sake, he is just bored out of his twat answering those questions. And maybe he's answered exactly the same questions 15 times. Doesn't matter. It's the first time I saw it. And he looks bored. Or how many times have you looked at something and thought, you know that old ad that they used to say, you wouldn't buy a used car from that man? Did you look at somebody and you go, untrustworthy, sleazy, don't like them. And it's just because you don't even know what the topic is. You don't know what they're saying. But you visually look at them and think, I don't trust them. So on television, how you look is very important. And where you look, by the way, look at the interviewer, not the camera. The rule with television is that we, the viewers, watch it because we trust the person who's doing the interview. So I want you to answer Brian Dobson on 6 o'clock news. I don't want you to turn around to the camera and say, well, I will tell you about me. I'm looking at him. If he believes you, I believe you. Do you remember when Bertie Ahern gave his interview when he lost his position as Taoiseach? He gave an interview with Brian Dobson. And when Brian Dobson looked uncomfortable, the whole country went, God. Yeah, it's very personal. The reaction wasn't Bertie Ahern's. We didn't react to him. We reacted how the interviewer reacted to him. And the interviewer felt it's not really right that somebody should have to answer so many personal questions on television. And what are your key messages? Same story. What are the 3 things you want to tell? And what image are you trying to portray? What do your clothes actually say about you? It fascinates me. We'll have an election next year. Watch how many people will change hairdos, will get a suntan, will buy a whole new wardrobe of clothes. And I actually think they're right. They're going for a job interview. They want us to elect them. I expect them to spruce up and get a new look. But watch the number of people who will say, oh my God, we've a new hairdo, we've a new look. Now, they should probably have been doing it all along. It's a different argument. But the clothes say something about the person. If you're a candidate, if you've never stood before, and you canvass in casual clothes, that's probably brilliant if you're canvassing for a left-wing party. It's not really brilliant if you're canvassing for Fine Gael and you're trying to get that middle class or that middle class farming vote. So clothes say a lot. Clothes matter on television particularly. Gay Byrne's interview with Pierce Brosnan, it's an old one. If you can find it anywhere, look it up. Gay Byrne's interview was about Pierce Brosnan had bought out some new movie, but his wife Cassie had died quite recently, maybe in the last 6-9 months before the interview. I was watching it that night, and Byrne, when Pierce Brosnan came out, Gay Byrne said to him, very first question, you know, you're very welcome. You lost your beloved wife Cassie recently. How are you coping with it? And Pierce Brosnan looked like somebody had smacked him with a wet fish. He nearly died. He went white on television. He's a very polished performer. He's a very polished actor. He froze. He looked desperately uncomfortable. He eventually said, you know, it was tough. And everybody knew she had been dying of cancer for a long time. It was current. When they broke, apparently Pierce Brosnan came up to, they broke for the ads, and Pierce Brosnan came up to Gay Byrne and said to him, the only thing I told your researcher, I spoke to your researcher about this, the only thing I told her was I would not talk about the death of my wife, and the very first question you asked me was about the death of my wife. And allegedly, Gay Byrne answered by saying, if you point out the researcher, I'll make sure they never work on this program again. And he was right. Everybody watching that show wanted to know how the hell was this guy coping after his wife died. If he wasn't going to talk about it, he shouldn't have been on the show. Because it was bound to be the first question. Interviewers ask questions that their audience want answered. So prepare for them effectively. If you look at visuals, movie press conference for Ronaldo. I'll just give you a couple of seconds of this, tell me what you think.
But I just feel
sorry.
comfortable. To be honest, I was comfortable with this guys.
Back? See what I mean? Technologically. How did we all survive before technology, by the way? But it's funny actually, for something like a web fest, you think, well, you really have to show the clips because otherwise it doesn't bring it alive. It's loading. That's okay.
Better than the web fest anyway, at least we got internet.
Yeah. You had no internet yesterday?
No, the web summit, sorry.
Oh, the web summit, oh my god. Embarrassing or what? Seriously. Actually, you know what really surprised me about from PR point?
Where you're going to get, how much access you're really going to get. And I think, you know, the surprising thing about this was how open Christian became to have.
Drag it right back. Here. Okay.
Will you please welcome the world's greatest footballer and the star of Ronaldo, Cristiano Ronaldo.
Watch the visual for a second.
And also the film's director, Anthony Fonka. And the producer, Paul Martin. Welcome, gents. How are we all? Good. I'll give you this microphone, Cristiano. That is yours. So I'm going to start with you, Cristiano. How did Anthony and Paul persuade you to take part in a documentary?
Bon dia, good morning, buenos dias. Well, in the beginning was fun, interesting. I spoke with my...
Life is too short. Okay. What was wrong with that press conference?
No feature.
Looked empty.
It looked empty, but most press conferences are. You look at that many people there. Visually, you're watching this on television. This is a clip on 6 o'clock news.
I don't know if it's
Project.
the light is very bad or is it just
Projector. What was going on with the projected Ronaldo film?
They should have projected it from the back.
I can't see Ronaldo.
Yeah, he's the darkest one.
He's the important person. He's the one that people want to watch. He sells the movie. And all I saw was he obviously had 2 beautiful studs in his ears, which were diamonds because the glint was fantastic. The background is entirely wrong. And look at the names in the front. Anything else about those?
They're just printouts. They're pretty ugly.
Okay, they're a bit tacky looking. They're very tacky looking. But besides that?
Yeah, look, there were other names, right?
Where's the interview?
Yeah, they're being reused, yeah.
But it's very confusing for the speakers. They don't know where they're sitting or anything when they come in. So
They had no idea. He called them in the order in which they were sitting, but obviously hadn't said, you sit here, you sit there, which was very simple. But he introduced, I don't know the guy in the middle. Does anybody know Anthony Wonka?
no.
Know of him? He introduced him as Anthony Fonka. Now, I don't know if that's a particularly ethnic way of pronouncing a W, or if he got it wrong. But he couldn't be Fonka spelled like that. just everything about it was sloppy, it was wrong, even to the way they introduced Ronaldo. And Ronaldo's first answer was, well, yeah, hello, good morning, it's very nice to be here. And he's chillaxed. It's a press conference. Speak up a little bit, lady, and give them what they're actually looking for. Let me see if this is taken back out. And let me give you another one if I can. You can tell that this is a blood sport. I love this stuff. PR is all about watching what everybody does. New York Film Festival, have you seen this piece with Noah Baumbach and Jake Paltrow? Okay, let me give you a couple of seconds of this if I can.
People who live downtown have been seeing you guys having dinner with Brian for years and years. How long did it take you to make the movie, and when did you decide to make these conversations into a movie?
Well, they were done about, I guess, a little over 5 years ago is when we actually did it. We did it over the course of a week. And I guess, I don't know, it was leading up to that, I think.
Visually on that one, clip for the 9 o'clock news.
The setup, the wires everywhere.
Position of the camera, like these people are in movies. Position of the camera. Branding.
It's alright.
Branding is actually good, yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter who speaks, you're going to get some of it. You get enough, you know it's the New York Film Festival, it works. Positioning of the chairs.
Yeah, they're a bit far apart.
Too wide for the camera.
Yeah, and are they actually setting them up? My first thought was when I saw it, oh, they're setting them up for an argument. These guys obviously don't get along together. It's spirit space because they're going to end up like bitching at each other. It doesn't look like a comfortable chat. The woman who was doing the interviewing, do you know something about her? She actually started talking before we saw how she came in, but that was the way it was cut. But her first question. Okay, let me give you her first question again. It was
That was somebody, when did you start filming?
She actually turned and it was like, it's all about me. Did you get that? It was very distracting. You watch it an entirely different way if you watch on news, and that's what happens. From a PR point of view, you watch every single element, because what people come away with was, did she love herself or what? Did you see that? She turned, now they haven't heard a word that the two guys said. That became the distraction. Let me flash this on if I can. If you get a chance, by the way, let me show you this one and then I'll tell you, I'll give you one piece of advice on another one to watch. This is last 30 seconds, Star Trek Beyond.
Without further ado, I think we are all set, so it gives me great pleasure, ladies and gents, to welcome you to this, the Star Trek Beyond official announcement here in Dubai, and it gives me even greater pleasure to welcome those that have made it possible as well. So, please join me in welcoming to the main stage none other than the executive producer of Star Trek Beyond, the one and only Jeffrey Chernoff. The screenwriter of Star Trek Beyond, please welcome Doug Young. The director is up next, and a man you know well. Please welcome Justin Lin. The leading actors, please welcome the one and only Chris Pine. Please welcome the one and only Simon Pegg. Please welcome the one and only Zach Winter. Please put your hands together for Idris Elba. And Carl Urban. Please welcome the one and only Anton Yelchin.
We came searching for the future, and we found it in Dubai. The experience of that.
Okay. What was wrong with that?
Took a minute to start.
Okay, you're getting even fussier than I am, but yeah, it did.
Is the sound gonna stay like that all the time, through and through?
Incredibly loud, isn't it?
Yeah.
What about the guy who was introducing the people who were on the podium?
You said the one and only most of the time.
I actually thought he was, look at this backdrop. They spent a fortune on this backdrop. This is the visual they want you to see, and they stand him to the left of it. with a curtain behind, with an orange curtain behind them. They bring on the people from the other side with an orange curtain behind them. Could they not have made it a little bit bigger? Could we not have seen the branding as he was introducing? When he introduced all of those people, if you were watching it as a journalist, I knew the minute I saw it, I thought I know exactly what the story is, and it has nothing to do with Star Wars. What's the story? What does the visual tell you?
Oh, it's
Not a woman in sight.
Yeah.
Not
Ridiculous.
one woman in sight. The minute I saw it, I thought, that's my story. If I was writing it, that would be my story. What happened to Princess Leia? I'm being told to wrap up here, so let me give you just the last one if I can. And this was just an example from Justine McGrath. She's a graduate of ours. She wrote a book, Conversations with My Father, Jack Kyle, who's a very well-known rugby player. I don't know anything about Jack Kyle or him playing rugby, but let me just give you her advice on being interviewed.
I was very interested in doing this course, having written my first non-fiction book. I was really interested to know what journalism was all about, what it entailed, and all the different forms of journalism. Particularly now with today's technology, there's so many more new forms of journalism coming into being. I like debating things, and I'm very interested in the topics of the day. I would read a lot of newspapers, and I'd listen to the radio a lot. And that was an aspect of the course that I just loved, was the fact that we had great discussions about stories of the day, court cases that were going on at the time, and other such topics. I would highly recommend this course. For me, the most surprising aspect of this course actually was learning about the scope of opportunities that there are in journalism. I suppose I had quite a narrow view in the sense that I was focusing really on news. And what I learned about the course was that there are so many more opportunities in journalism. Not only in terms of the forms of journalism that you can write, but there's all the different types of online journalism. There's blogging, there's interviewing people, there's writing about maybe a speciality that you have, there's travel. So as much as I knew, obviously, there were a lot of topics that you could write about, I didn't realise that there were so many opportunities for writing in different forms. And that really surprised me and delighted me, because it opened up a whole new area of journalism for me that I wasn't aware of at all. I just found the course so enjoyable, and actually it was one of those courses, in fact I think it's the only course ever that I've been on where I used to look forward to a Thursday night and I'd be like, look.
Sorry, we uploaded the wrong clip, because the clip that I wanted to give you was her talking about creating interviews with her father, Jack Kyle, because her father was very ill at the time that the book was actually published. And they did a series of radio interviews, and she talked about the fact that she did one with Miriam O'Callaghan, and Miriam O'Callaghan was very gentle and said, look, we pre-record the interview, because obviously she knew the man was dying. We pre-record the interview, if you want to go back over pieces again, go back over it again. And other journalists just looked for the story and really didn't care that this was an older man who should have been paid a little bit more respect, so apologies. Wrong click. I just wanted to finish by telling you, PR, you should be doing it. It doesn't matter whether you're the producer, the director, you're looking for your next slot in acting, you should be doing it all day, every day. You should be constantly thinking, who else out there should I be telling about me, my product, my work? Who else can help to spread the message? It's exactly what Jack was doing on social media. You should be doing it on radio and television as well. And my apologies for the overrun, which I guess happened because I wasn't watching the time when I started, so I have no idea how long I spoke for. Apologies for the overrun. Thanks for your attention.